Yeah, no, it goes back to the very beginning of this conversation where we were talking about how do we say LGBTQ plus or to LGBTQ plus IA. I think it is creating a therapeutic space for individuals and being open to how are you identifying right now? Uh, some things, are you trans man, trans female? No, I'm female. They don't want to be called trans. They're female. They're male. And you know what? You use those words, creating a therapeutic space where they don't need to identify as trans anything. They are male in our room, and we need to give them the space for that. I think that's important to use the words that people identify with, and I think that affirms them. Uh, Respecting the pronouns they use, also respecting, as we spoke about earlier in this conversation, respecting the political and the socio issues right now in the U.S. Or wherever our clients may be living. You know, the T was taken out of LGBT. With the U.S. government took the T out of LGBT. Like we need to at least acknowledge that these outside these pressures, these are legislative pressures, and of discrimination on our clients, and it's not okay. And what does that feel like? And I mean, I mean, to me, if I was transgender, I would feel like, do I not exist in the eyes of the federal government? Do I not exist? And where does that put me? Where does that leave me? And that's scary. I mean, that's got to be. I mean, if I were trans, I'm gay, and and I'm already scared. They haven't taken the G out yet, but they've taken the T out, and so where are they at with that? And so I start thinking about, working with these types of clients, first acknowledging who they are, where they're at, using the pronouns, and two, realizing where they are in society and what society is taking away from them, or the pressure they're putting on them.
Well, it's interesting you bring up like how trans people are being cut out of the acronym, right? The solidarity and kind of they call it an alliance, and the government, the party in power, basically feeling like taking an official stance that they're excluded somehow breaks up the alliance. It makes the first question of how are these identities different but overlapping that much more pertinent, because it's like, yeah, being transgender is not a sexual orientation, but how is it that those two are connected and how they overlap? And I think what it comes down to is being non-conforming, being sexually non-conforming, being gender non-conforming. And even if the party in power in America decides that that's not something they're going to allow, either through illegalizing medical care or through officializing acronyms, renaming the Gulf of Mexico, their goofy strategies, right? Like that doesn't really impact what people's identity expression is, and yet it can make their life so much harder. So yeah, when I think of how they overlap, I think it's like there's an alliance of people who want to express their identity authentically, whether it's through their sexual expression, their gender expression, etc. And the world makes it tough, so they need special consideration and counseling.
That makes me think a lot about the gender. I don't know if you guys were able to get to that, but it was in one of our options, the gender non-binary, that video.
Mhm.
And I really liked the way, I can't remember the person's name, but anyway, I really like the way they explained how, all this hate is really, a hate is really a hate for, they hate themselves. And they also hate not being able to, they hate freedom, or they feel like they can't be free to express, and they definitely want to divide, make it binary. It's always about male or female, right? So not comfortable with any sort of in the middle, any variation of any, thing outside of that, but only comfortable with being binary and pitting us against each other. So it's male or female. Um, so that really made me think about that video, and just sort of, when they're being hated, when trans people or LGBTQ or whoever is being hated, it's really more about like, it's, they hate themselves, right? Because if you don't, like, if you like yourself, you don't care about what anybody else is doing. You don't like, they're not bothering you. They're living their lives. They're happy. They're free. If you're happy and free, why would you care about what other people are doing? So
Too
I
bad this.
think it's that,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's too bad those folks tend not to come to therapy. It could be very constructive.
mhm. And as far as like RCT goes, using RCT, being on making sure you're on the egalitarian relationship with your clients is super important. So, you know, kind of modeling what equality looks like in a counseling room with self-disclosure and making sure that you're not in a position of, even if you are in a position of, say, a non-marginalized group, making sure that you acknowledge that and discuss that with the client, just so they don't feel, you are, so they feel like they are on a more equal playing field with you. I think that's a big proponent of RCT. I did a project on that, so I'm fairly familiar with it. But yeah, that mutual empathy and just making sure you're kind of staying, trying to see the world in their eyes, kind of thing,
Mhm.
is really important.
I can imagine that being in that position, being in the United States society today, you're going to have incredible anxiety anyway. But being in that position today, we're going to be dealing with multiple things in the client therapist room. Like we're going to be dealing with anxiety, we're going to be dealing with trauma, we're going to be dealing with probably depression. The anxiety of going outside. Am I going to be accepted by the person that I'm buying groceries from? The anxiety of, am I going to have rights tomorrow? The depression that I live in a society where at least half the people don't want me to exist. Like,
Yep.
and it's our job to understand all of those things, but we're going to have to walk through these things with our clients. And these aren't easy talks and these aren't easy walks, and it's not going to be an easy process. And that's why we take classes like we're taking now, is to learn these skills to walk with them. Yeah.
I can certainly see how like relational cultural theory, the aspect of like disconnection and honing in on a client's experience of community in their lives, like finding what relational images they're carrying with them, the controlling images, how our society is trying so hard to shape how they view themselves and to create laws about how you ought to be able to identify clients with those identities who come in. Like we would, it's hard to imagine us being effective at all if we're not aware of those controlling images and if we're not willing to be curious and investigate how like negative relational images have shaped how they're connecting and disconnecting from other people.
Yeah. And to me, that goes into coping strategies. How are they coping day to day? Are they limiting the amount of, I've had to limit the amount of news that I see.
Oh,
Because
me too.
yeah, news
Like,
is all.
no, I'm done now. Yeah.
You have to limit the amount of news that you're seeing. Where are your fears coming from? Are they fear of discrimination from your family? These are boundary settings. If it's your family, it's your priest, your preacher, your person of faith that you go to. Some of these things we may have to talk about. We limit access to them because it's damaging to our client.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in some. How do we? What do we do? How do we say? Because those would be my first thoughts. Where are you getting all the anxiety from? And a lot of it's going to be social media limitation, news limitation, having to cut ties with the people, friends, family, that are not healthy for us. And and it has to be okay. And we have to talk about that with the client. Like it's not okay to be bombarded with negative, what's the word? Bullshit. From like just negative bullshit from all these people, especially people that we're supposed to trust and love and that are supposed to love us no matter what.
Absolutely. I know bullshit in that article was referred to as a negative relational image, but they may have used that terminology as well.
Okay, good. You can cut that out if you want.
No,
But
I think that's an apt
it is
description.
bullshit. Yeah, it's just such crap. So
Yeah, I just think it's really important to help find the language to help these clients or any client that needs empowerment in their life to live by
sure.
a certain set of rules that they've set for themselves around, help them recognize how hurtful language and actions and microaggressions are.
It's yeah,
How
you're right.
hurtful.
You're right, Sloan. And it's the microaggressions that people are like, oh, I'm from the South. You are. I think we're all from the South. It's the freaking microaggressions that are just like, oh, we're totally fine with you and your family. We just don't need it in front of us.
Totally, yeah.
Could you wear something different? You don't need to hold hands. I mean, the poor kids. And it's just
Yeah. Yeah, it's so normalized that it's just the backdrop to life that becomes the normal that we all experience. It's awful.
mm-hmm.
We need a breathing exercise.
Yeah.
We got into some heavy stuff.
Feel like my stomach just tight.
Yeah. I feel it in my shoulders a little bit. That's where I tend to get my tension. But yeah, just thinking about the government becoming like an oppositional force to people groups, that's like, it's scary stuff.